Will an assured short hold tenancy always be considered settled accommodation for homeless applications? Now, this might seem like a really odd question. Just to give a bit of context, it all relates to intentional homelessness because this term settled accommodation is very key when it comes to a council working out whether you're intentionally homeless or not. And basically, and I've done a kind of a longer video about this, but basically a council's job is to look back through your address history to work out where was your last settled accommodation and what was the reason for you losing it in effect. So if we just look at this kind of first arm of this test, so where was your last settled accommodation, there's lots of different types of accommodation which are not settled, so obviously not settled, so sofa surfing, staying in a night shelter, staying in a women's refuge are all not settled accommodation. But there are obviously other types of accommodation which are, you know, a little bit more complicated to work out. Now, case law is clear that accommodation is either settled or it's temporary. There's not kind of a sliding scale. And I guess that leads to the question of, well, at what point does accommodation need to be considered as settled? Now, assured short hold tenancies you would think would automatically be settled accommodation because it's, you know, it's obviously the most common type of private tenancy in the land. I would imagine that millions of people have an assured short hold tenancy, but there are some cases where actually assured short hold tenancies weren't considered to be settled accommodation, and the courts found that that was correct. So there's a case called Knight v Vale Royal Borough Council. I don't even know where that is, but basically this really kind of came into effect because what had happened was this individual had been evicted through their own fault from some sort of accommodation in the past. They then secured an assured short hold tenancy, but crucially the landlord had told them from day one, this is only going to be for 6 months. You know, it's only going to be, the arrangement's only going to be 6 months. It's not going to keep rolling on. So that person knew from day one that that was going to happen, and the landlord showed that they were serious about it. You know, so it wasn't just kind of like a random thing. They said they were, you know, they were clear that that was what was going to happen. And sure enough, 6 months later, the landlord evicted them, and they then made a homeless application to the council. And basically the council looked at intentionality. They looked at this question of where was their last settled accommodation, and they concluded that this assured short hold tenancy that they knew from day one was only going to last for 6 months did not count as settled accommodation. So the council were entitled to go back to the previous address and essentially find that they were intentionally homeless. And as I say, the courts found that this was a correct approach. So it's often helpful to understand the exception to the rule so you understand the default. So assured short hold tenancies would ordinarily be considered settled accommodation, except where, like this situation, where the individual knows from day one that it's not going to last any longer than the 6 month minimum term. And that means that it's important to understand when you're kind of going to a council that that's the sort of inquiries, that's sort of the line of inquiries that they're going to take to work out whether you are or you're not intentionally homeless. So hopefully that's helpful. As I say, if you've got questions like this, keep them coming on the YouTube comment section. Any video, if you comment on them, ask a question, I'll get a notification, and I'll take them to the weekly live stream Q&A every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. If you subscribe to the channel, you get a notification that's happening automatically, and also when other videos are being uploaded. And if you want to come to the live stream, it's great to have people there, because often what happens is people ask a question and what we need is more information to understand the context so we can give a sensible answer. And so it kind of enables us to have that kind of live kind of to and fro and just to work out what the details are. So yeah, do check that out as well.